Hello, this is Niswander. More economic news. You may have heard about the CARES Act that was passed by 100% of the Congress in March. Well, it's more than just $4 trillion as it turns out, and I have information from a financial expert and more coming up next on the Nowman Show right now.
Let's all try to put the pieces back together again.
According to Dylan Ratigan, who is essentially I would call him an expert in financial and banking system issues. He has worked for Bloomberg organization. He also had his own show on MSNBC for a while in the early part of the 21st century. And he is known for a rant about the banking system, the bailouts of 2008 into 2009 on his show.
This is not some opinion. This is a mathematical fact. Tens of trillions of dollars are being extracted from the United States of America. Democrats aren't doing it. Republicans are not doing it. An entire integrated system, financial system, trading system, taxing system that was created by both parties over a period of 2 decades is at work on our entire country right now. And we're sitting here arguing about whether we should do the $4 trillion plan that kicks the can down the road for the president for 2017 or burn the place to the ground. Both of which are reckless, irresponsible, and stupid.
He has more recently come out again to talk about similar kinds of issues that have happened in 2020 because of the pandemic, public health and safety crisis, as Richard Wolff, the economist, calls it. And initially in March, the CARES Act was passed by 100% of the Congress. That was, we were told, about $4 trillion created by the Federal Reserve Bank, which, by the way, is not a public bank, as many might think it is, because it has federal in its title. The Federal Reserve Bank is actually privately owned. There are associations with the government, I guess you could say the public sector in that sense, but for the most part it is a privately owned bank. And they created $4 trillion through this CARE Act that went to especially, I guess, essential businesses, or what were designated as essential businesses. It wasn't very transparent. Probably only about 1,000 people really got that money to make decisions about what was going to be done with it, to keep their businesses going. Passed very quickly, within a matter of days, middle of March, as the quarantine was announced. And we do know that. But Dylan Ratigan points out that there's really much more to it. It's probably more like 10 trillion, but again, just to throw numbers around it, there needs to be an insurance policy, right? If people lose money or their investment doesn't work with the money they were given. For instance, if a bank loans some money to someone, they think they're going to get the payments back and it goes into default. Obviously, they need an insurance policy, right? So, insurance money supposedly came from the National Treasury, which would include our tax dollars. It's a further consolidation of wealth by the super rich. And the super rich can essentially take the taxpayers' money and make more money to accumulate the assets. And then in doing this, the government, as I say government, I'm referring to Washington, the politicians and the lobbyists, they're appearing to at least take advantage of a biological crisis while being active at a time of a biological crisis to actually do something constructive and help people, when in fact they're just really finding ways to accumulate wealth for themselves, essentially. Now, going back to 2009, 2008, 2009, The same kind of thing happened, similar kind of thing happened from like September of 2008 to March of 2009. If you remember, John McCain had to leave the presidential campaign trail because they were anticipating that the downturn wouldn't happen until after the election. Well, they were a little bit off on that. So Cain had to return back to Washington to vote on the stimulus bill at that time. That process went from like September 2008 into the Obama administration in the spring of 2009. And of course it continued, loans and all that kind of thing really basically continued after that. Essentially bailing out the too big to fail banks and the too big to fail businesses, many that got even bigger than ever after that during the Obama administration. So we're seeing kind of the same thing now, which tells me they're expecting the same kind of thing to happen again. But at some point, it can't continue. And who knows what will happen going forward, essentially. And I guess even with that last stimulus, the last time, any one congressperson could have stopped it, but it didn't happen, and it didn't happen this time. It was passed 100%. So there was a portion of it, maybe in that other $2 trillion that wasn't considered part of the insurance policy for the four original, that went to those $600, unemployment checks that ended July 26th apparently, and also to those $1,200 one-time stimulus checks that some people got, but that fund is apparently dried up, and now in August of 2020, what's going to happen next seems to be the question. Here's a great quote from Dylan Ratigan. As he said, "I was very emotional about this 10 years ago. America has shown the world what it is, and it is a rapacious and destructive oligarchy that is funded by the taxpayer at the expense of the taxpayer. It calls itself a democracy using propaganda of democracy." Sometimes I need to reiterate ideas just to have further clarification about subjects, and in this case, the CARES Act. So, in a nutshell, 1,000 people approximately consolidated the American economy by getting $4 trillion plus. It's a lot of zeros, especially if it can be up to 10 trillion. We really don't know. It's not very transparent, really. So it strangles taxpayers, calling it a bailout for the taxpayers while exploiting a biological event. This is an interesting quote here from Dylan. "I think the American people are well aware at this point both political parties are working with large financial and corporate interests to destroy them. I just think they don't know what to do about it." End quote. So, and no leadership really stepped up, in social media, interviews, anything, to talk about this in more detail. Not Bernie Sanders, not AOC, not Elizabeth Warren, those who you would think would be verbal about what this actually is a transfer of wealth to the wealthy. Of course, scapegoats are going to be used. The poor are always used as a scapegoat, as the ones that get handouts. Truly, the contradictions of the system, the hypocrisy, the double standard of what it means to talk about handouts. But because these are the elite class, are the benefactors of this massive handout, once again, of course they're going to find scapegoats, and poor people, or those that would be categorized as the workers or the working class. Here's another interesting quote from Dylan. "Trump is a bigger liar. Trump is more self-saving. He's more of a psychopath. He's less empathetic, etc., etc., etc. When the rubber meets the road economically, everyone from Bernie Sanders to Rand Paul to Barack Obama picked them. everybody's on the same page, which is give the money to the large banks and financial institutions and let them consolidate ownership of all of the weaker assets. A smaller group of people own more and more of all of the assets in the country and then call it help or call it caring. So let's not be in denial of what really took place in March as we go forward in understanding why our lives are as they are in 2020. I want to go into a topic that I've been talking about on the Nowman Show for quite some time. There's more updates, obviously, in 2020, especially now during the public health and safety crisis, pandemic, and that's healthcare. I've talked about Medicare for All. And I'll get into that. But before I do, a little bit of a historical background in the subject of single payer. On the campaign trail in 2007 to 2008, before he became president, Barack Obama, he campaigned all around the country telling us that we need a single-payer healthcare program here in the United States. Well, not only did that not happen when he got elected president, he had to take what's called the public option completely off the table going forward. We ended up with Obamacare. More people could get covered than before, instead of the premise of getting everyone covered. And that's basically what Medicare for All would do. Now, the Barack Obama presidency turned into 2 terms. So taking even the public option off the table to go in that direction was because he accepted millions of dollars from big pharmaceutical and big insurance companies. So we didn't even have the option to go in the direction of Medicare for All. And when donors do a political campaign, something that's legal in the United States, give you millions of dollars, well, you tend to incorporate what they want, which is exactly what he did, because he also got a second term of 4 years. So, fast forward, as you know, it was part of Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016 and 2020 when he campaigned for president. And here we are in 2020 with a public health and safety pandemic crisis. And we still don't have a healthcare system, healthcare for everyone. We have a combination of different organizations, businesses, for-profit models working together with the government. The government model basically is Medicare, the federal government, created during the LBJ administration in the 1960s. Very popular. And it's something that senior citizens have. There are various forms that people with low incomes get. Here in California, it's called Medi-Cal. You don't have to pay. There's no out-of-pocket expenses, deductibles, premiums, anything like that. It's not a for-profit model, right? No healthcare system anywhere in the world is going to be perfect, and I'll say that probably more than once in this segment, including a single-payer program, including the Medicare system that exists here in the United States. Single-payer basically means you have one administrator. You don't have these different organizations or companies working together kind of as a daisy chain, where you have maybe a specialist medical company that's for profit, and then you work with a non-profit somehow that's a medical service, or an HMO or PPO, where these are for-profit businesses. They're not providing health care because it's a human right. They're offering it to make a profit, like a cell phone or a refrigerator or a car. It's a crazy system. It doesn't cost less than a government-based system. It's not really any more efficient. I'll get to that in a minute here, even though some people will tell you that a for-profit model is more efficient. I talked to a person recently that came from what he called a democratic socialist country with a socialist healthcare system, and he was basically saying it's inferior to ours, and yet acknowledged that, you know, the for-profit model with all the money and the bureaucracy and the dysfunction, you know, the administrative nightmare that it is, and the price tag that is outrageous for the average family. It's really a system for those who are financially more comfortable, or for the wealthy. And he talked about, in the country where he came from, about how there's no costs set up, no system set up for malpractice suits, or you have to wait a long time to get a certain procedure, or to see a doctor for this or that reason. And he did very quickly say at one point, and I didn't ask him to elaborate more, but very quickly, this is how he said it. Some countries are better than others. But he did say something like that. Some countries are better than others, and he said it fast like that. I heard it. I caught it. But he was basically, you know, we were in agreement that no system is perfect, whether it's in a democratic socialist country, as he called it, or here in the United States. And of course, here in the United States, we also agreed that the costs are just absolutely outrageous and through the roof for those, you know, who can't afford some of these medical expenses, hospital bills and things like that. Bankrupts people. It's just an insane system when it comes to the cost. I will say that there are some incredible technologies here in the United States, like for instance the MRI machine. But if somebody says that, you know, we get easier access to an MRI machine here in the United States, well, yeah, that's because they're made in the United States, and it's their business model to give priority to American companies, and they can't just crank those out like you would crank out, you know, something small. These are complicated machines, and you know, it takes time to get a you know, an inventory built, and probably as soon as you get inventory set up, it's all gone because there's, you know, customers all over the world that want to buy it. So yes, countries who are not, you know, on the list, maybe they don't, you know, depending on where you are on the list, I guess U.S. medical companies get priority. Of course, we're going to have more of those machines, so yes, we're going to have more access to that kind of care. But that doesn't necessarily mean our overall system is better, because it isn't. I mean, we're the only one of its kind in the world, and we're falling backwards in so many different ways, you know, which the overall quality of the healthcare is one of those ways that we are falling back. And we have quality nurses and doctors and education, and as well as technology, but that doesn't mean that we're overall the best system. There's so many other different factors. Just like overseas, talking about people waiting in lines or waiting a long time to get procedures. Well, I find that that's true here in the United States a lot too. Maybe if you're more financially comfortable or wealthy, maybe that's not the case. You don't have to wait in line or wait as long. If you have more money to pay for it, it would make sense they would put you at the front of the line. And I've heard stories and seen some things myself, so there is some degree of truth to that. To deny that would not be a fair evaluation of comparing systems. A lot of people wait in line. A lot of people have to wait for appointments and procedures in this country. It's just in the United States. It's not a whole lot different in many ways than the socialized health systems of Europe in that way. So basically, Medicare is an already existing system for senior citizens, like there's Medi-Cal in California for people with low income. So this basic system already exists, that's administrated and through the government, and with government tax funds within the system. You and I pay taxes. The difference is Medicare for All literally is that. You take the Medicare system and you make that for everyone. That's what it is. So there have been polls, and not just the one as of April after the quarantine was announced for the COVID-19. But in April, it's demonstrative of other similar polls, similar types of statistics. 88%, I believe it was a Harvard poll, because numerous sources have reported it. 88% of people registered Democrat favor it. 69 overall in the country, and up to 46% of Republicans favor Medicare for All. And yet, the establishment, nope. We're going to keep the system that we have, or at least we're going to keep the for-profit companies, the PPOs, the HMOs, other medical companies, pharmaceutical companies. We're going to keep them in the loop, and they'll be able to charge the prices that they wish to charge, or supposedly supply and demand in a supposed free market. But most people do not prefer that kind of a system. They prefer Medicare for All. So going forward, this is going to be continue to be a big story as things unfold, and as we all together should be coming together to find solutions, not to ignore what has been working around the world. Not perfect. Everybody who has healthcare for everyone is trying to make it better, but at least everyone is covered. The United States doesn't have everyone covered. That should always be the initial premise, and then you go from there to make it better. Medicare for All is the way, system we already have. We could make that happen very quickly, and it wouldn't cost necessarily any more than what we're already paying for it. So I had to discuss this. It's important. It's time we move forward and get everyone health care, because it is a human right. It's part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, taken to the UN, and it was passed in the 1940s. And it was taken to the UN by former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, so an American. So it can be done. Most countries, civilized countries around the world, have done it this way. They're in form of a single payer, one administrator system. We can do this. Someone pointed out to me the other day that maybe we're using the wrong kind of terminology when we talk about social distancing. It's really more like physical distancing because of public health and safety reasons. Social distancing really implies socializing, and that's something we shouldn't stop doing. We have to be practical and smart about how we do socialize, going beyond the internet, let's say. But physical distancing is really what this is about, right? Or standing 6 feet apart. That's more physical distancing than social distancing. One thing that I often say to when I talk to people is a kind word and a compassionate action towards someone is always a daily thing that we should be doing multiple times, as much as we can. And I only encourage people to safely, mingle with others, get together with people in situations that are mutually respectful, and but also find ways to have fun, and do things. Still, don't focus only on the issues that you obviously find is very concerning, very serious, and just like in your own personal life, when you have certain problems that present themselves, you do want to address them. You don't want to delay or postpone dealing with them. It's very important. But at the same time, part of that is your mental health as well. And you want to be sure that there's a balance there, that, do some things to have some fun. If it's, listening to music, playing music. In my case, I make music blogs, as well as have entertainment content on the Nowman Show. And variety I also particularly like. I also enjoy sometimes just conversation on all different kinds of topics that don't have to be serious. They can just be kind of fun and silly. Again, it doesn't mean that I'm distracted from the reality of what's going on. It's just it's a balance. Some people might use the word therapy. There's also another area I'm going to get into. I like to use the word contemplation. It's really the same thing as meditation as to what I'm referring to right now. Sometimes at night, if you're a creative person or just a concerned person, your thoughts are racing, going 100 miles an hour, and you're trying to get to sleep because you need to go to sleep, right? You have responsibilities and things you have to get up for the next day. And that's why some people do meditation at night before they go to sleep, to help quiet down those thoughts. I also will spend some more time reading from my book as the year goes on. I haven't done that much. I'll share some other aspects in addition to my music, artistically, and also expand on my learning with the economic transition part, which does include intersectionality, as I got into in the episode. There's also a couple of other documentaries you can see on the Nowman Show. In 2018, I did one called The Roots of Society and the Enlightenment of Solutions. And in 2019, I did a documentary called What is Democratic Socialism and Economic Bill of Rights. So this learning process goes on, and as that goes on, then I will continue to share that information with you as well. We all should be experiencing an evolutionary process. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, especially if we're not used to the kinds of things that we're seeing in our society now. So again, to the point of compassionate acts and kind words to others, I mean, that's very fundamentally where I would begin if you're looking for conscious ways to do that every day. But be sure you do self-care first, of course. Put that into perspective, and then you'll see that part of that self-care actually is reaching out to others and doing that. I do agree with Professor Richard Wolff. There are better ways of running enterprises, just like there can be better ways of running government. There can be better ways of handling any kind of relationship, whatever that might be. So essentially, it's up to us, right? We're social creatures. We do need to be smart about how we treat each other and how we respect one another, particularly in times such as where we are now. But we are social creatures. Most people are not hermits, so we need to find ways to come together and embrace, the interaction and the joy of doing that, and as well as engaging in interesting conversation. And like I say, it doesn't have to be just serious issues. It can also have a lighter side, and I think a balance is good. If you're interested in inviting me as a guest on your show, we can talk about a variety of different topics. That's what I'm about. Cultural and economic transition, and then some. Intersectionality. Whatever works. Music, film, let me know. Until next time, this is Dan Nowman Niswander. You're watching The Nowman Show. Stay present in the moment, always.